Hey guys! Just starting off, awesome discussion. I'm really glad I didn't mess it up because I've never done this before. So I'm glad that everyone was like receptive to some of the ideas, and then even the quote that was posted for the discussion board. I didn't really get into that the political and capitalism side of the article just because it just seemed like there wasn't enough information in the article itself about it, and so I haven't written my post yet, so I'm excited to dive deeper into that. But just kind of regarding the two questions I think that everyone mostly focused on were number one and number two, so digesting this idea that panoramas should be studied and taken more seriously, and then also by art historians, and then also this idea of kind of machines versus man, and so that like came up a lot in the themes. So just a couple of things I really liked from the discussion. So JC, you were talking about like being a graphic designer and designing like a web image versus the print image, and kind of how these panorama paintings tended to be like not less artistly done, but a little bit more about the theatrical event of spinning and movement than the actual painting itself. And so I don't know if you guys took a look at some of the links that I posted, but that totally is the case. So that was a really cool point, and just like really interesting. And then Kyle, you brought up kind of when we're in regards to question two, the fact that technology is progressive and beneficial more so than it is like harmful. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit more, but I thought that was really interesting because I never really looked at it at this point of like evil versus good, I guess. So that was awesome. And then Kara, you kind of banks off of that. I really liked your second video. I felt like it dove really deep. You said you were rambling, but you weren't. But yeah, like dove really deep into this idea of antagonist versus protagonist, because that was a question the article had brought up. And you had said that there's not really an antagonist or protagonist, like this relationship between technology and man doesn't have to be like good versus bad. It's more so just focused on, I think, this idea that like humans are their own worst enemy. And so when in regards to social media, when we start talking about technology that humans really use, kind of what is our social responsibility in using those technologies. And it's not necessarily that the machine itself is taking over, but rather that humans aren't capable of handling the responsibility maybe a little bit more. So yeah, all really cool points, all super interesting. I apologize for just posting now. I'm like, it's been a crazy week, but so I'm gonna post some more questions along with this video, but I'll kind of talk about it. So in regards mostly to question two, because I think question one, when we talk about panoramas being important, I think we're kind of all on the same page that obviously they have some very deeply rooted importance in the art history world. Yeah, photography for sure. I'm not a photographer, but I think definitely when you talk about what makes a dramatic or like photograph, or what makes you immersed as an audience member, definitely this idea of panoramas being the picture that's supposed to draw you in the most. It's supposed to make you feel like you're actually in that space. So totally true. So yeah, I think we kind of all agreed on that point for the most part. I haven't seen it a lot personally in my art history class. I'm a museum studies major, so predominantly the classes I take are art history classes, but I usually shy away from photography classes and focus more on painting, so like Baroque and Renaissance art, and even some of the earlier art forms, but there's never really been any mention of panoramas, and so I think it's interesting that people don't dive deeper into that, because it's obviously has some serious importance when we talk about kind of this melding of art and technology. So moving into art and technology and really focusing on the kind of this balance, what do you guys think about the technological ramifications of panoramas, and what does their kind of relationship look like in the future? So kind of this idea of like, where do we go from here? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about panoramas. Maybe what do you guys think about technology and art, essentially? Like, where are we going now? I don't think that painting is outdated at all. I think that definitely a lot of people really still connect with that as an art form, even though it's a little bit older than like photography. We kind of saw that with that dumb app that made a kind of headlines a couple of months ago that had talked about like matching your face with like a historic art piece, which is fine. But I think that there's kind of this rejuvenation for art in our younger generations and our local communities. So that was a ramble, but the main question is like, what do you guys think about the future of art in technology, and like what does that look like in the future? We have come a long way from panoramas just being simply canvases on like a moving wheel. So where do we go from there? Obviously film, but elaborate a little bit more. And then kind of diving deeper into question 2. So we kind of focus this idea, and just to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, but pretty much everyone disagreed with Kittler. And so kind of this idea that machines aren't taking over, technology is not taking over. I kind of think a little bit of the opposite, Kara, like what you were talking about at the end of your last post, with just like technology and our relationship with social media and also just the internet in general. The biggest thing that came to mind was bots and kind of how those played a role in the election last year. So we even kind of saw that already. So is it our responsibility as humankind to kind of take responsibility for the technology that we're breathing into the world? Or is it kind of going to be this thing that just no one knows anything about or enough about, and therefore no one has enough control on it? So just kind of, that was a very specific example, just this idea of like Twitter bots and then fake accounts and stuff like that. But how, because to me that supports Kittler's idea that, you know, technology and versus man is kind of this head-to-head kind of transition. So a funny anecdote, this really made me think of that movie. This is a deep cut, but there's a movie called Existence from 1999, so it's like a really old movie. And it actually dove deep into that, it studied this idea of like, because, you know, back in the 90s, the big thing was like mothers were saying like, oh, our kids are like heavily influenced by video games. And so it really focused on that idea that people may be more, you know, people may be more affected by technology than they realize. And I think that definitely, that argument has some credibility. And so it was like this virtual reality that was actually like real and just like crazy. It's a great movie if you guys, it has like a 78% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not phenomenal, but it's pretty good for like a 90s movie. So anyways, so kind of studying that idea of immersion into technology. So yeah, if you guys have anything else, let me know, obviously. I look forward to your videos. And then I'll probably post again since it's Friday, and then it'll be someone else's turn next week. So thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. All right, bye.